Welcome back, it's Ryzen, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys yet another completely blind review on Hell's Paradise. This is my third video reviewing the series, so if you haven't seen my first two arc reviews, they are linked down in the description, and I highly recommend watching those first before you watch this video, because I will be referencing them throughout this review. Next week, I will be uploading a review on the final arc, so make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that, and you might as well leave a like to support the channel while you're down there. With that out of the way, I wanted to briefly mention something that has been brought to my attention by a few of you guys that had commented on my last couple of reviews, and you guys basically just said that I had went way too hard on Senta and I really overstepped my bounds, and for that I sincerely apologize. I want to make it clear right here and right now that I meant no harm to the Senta enthusiasts out there, and I am reaching my heart out to the entire Senta community and apologizing on behalf of my disrespect. But to be honest, I was just messing around, and I picked Senta to be the victim of my relentless roasting for the same reason why you probably got bullied in high school, for being fat, ugly, and defenseless. But in all seriousness, I actually thought that his character arc and death were pretty good, and to make reparations, I will no longer be clowning on him. Now that I'm done being stupid, let's actually talk about this arc, which is called the Horai arc, and it covers chapters 60 through 110. I thought that this arc was the best arc so far, and it pretty much took all of the characters that we had already loved and explored them even deeper. It gave us some of the best fights in the series to go along with that as well. To make sure I cover all my bases, I'm going to be using the same approach I took in my last review, and I'm going to be dissecting this arc one event after the other, and then when I'm done, I'm going to give some big picture thoughts and criticisms. So to start out, let's talk about the training and planning phase that we see in the beginning of the arc. This part of the arc was definitely the lowest overall because there was a lot of exposition and information being delivered that I felt was just overall unnecessary. It was very obvious that this plan would end up falling apart and the characters would be forced to fight the Lord Tenzin anyways, so hearing all of these strategies and plans that were destined to fail was just pretty uninteresting. This actually reminded me a lot of the beginning of the Palace Raid portion of the Chimera Ant arc, which is pretty much the most boring portion of all of Hunter x Hunter, but in Hell's Paradise, I actually think it was done a little better because of the comedy that was sprinkled in. I thought that this was probably one of the funniest parts in this series, but overall the comedy isn't really fully able to lock me in. After the training and some more exposition, we then get into the Gabimaru and Yuzuriha versus Rien fight. This fight was absolutely incredible because it reminded me why I love Gabimaru so much. Not only is his aggression, brutality, and overall fighting style just sick, but he's also a fighting genius. Seeing his multi-layered attack strategy in action was incredible to read, and I especially enjoyed the moment when he redirected Rien's Tao to hit him despite having the worst Tao attribute to fight him. And speaking of Tao attributes, it just kind of bothered me how much emphasis was being placed on these attributes throughout the entirety of this arc. While I really do appreciate the additional layer of complexity and strategy that it adds to the series, I do feel like every single chapter has at least one page talking about the different Tao attributes and their matchups, which does feel a little bit wasteful. With that being said, the result of this persistent focus allows fights like this one to flourish. Yuzuriha, who would have normally been pretty much a non-factor in this fight with powerful fighters such as Rien and Gabimaru, was actually crucial due to her Tao attribute. Their teamwork and the way it was choreographed was a real highlight of this arc for me. On top of that, we got to see Gabimaru undergo the flower transformation thingy that Chobe did, which was to be expected, but it was still hype nonetheless. And as for the end of this fight, I genuinely thought that Yuzuriha had died here, and I was already preparing to rant about how trash her death was, but it does turn out that she's still alive, so that's good. And I actually like how this was handled because when I thought she died, it gave me the impression that Kaku, the mangaka, wasn't going to be pulling his punches, and from then on out, I was genuinely scared whenever a character was taking a lot of damage. Overall, this fight was very good and it was full of great character moments for both Gabimaru and Yuzuriha. After all is said and done, we immediately dive into the next altercations, which are the fight between the Aza brothers and Jufa and Gentetsusai and Fuchi versus Taofa. As for the Aza brothers, the moment when they smiled at each other before reuniting and betraying Jufa was definitely one of my most favorite moments in the whole series. The panel was just perfect and I love how it portrayed the brothers. Their teamwork was amazing, and seeing Toma's improvement and Chobe's happiness with his brother was just wholesome. As for Gentetsusai and Fuchi versus Taofa, I thought that Taofa was pretty interesting and funny for our Lord Tenzin, and additionally Gentetsusai was easily the best part of his fight. Him ripping out his own eye to master Tao was just breathtaking, and just the energy that he was giving off throughout this entire fight was perfect. I really enjoyed the insight that we got into his past. The idea of the more that you have, the harder it is to see things for what they truly are is a truly powerful concept, and I thought that connecting this to Tao usage was very interesting and well done. We then get to the portion of the fight when Taofa and Jufa merge, and I honestly really wasn't expecting that. But their backstory about caring for each other was pretty lame, and it really did pale in comparison to the Aza brothers. The fight, however, was pretty entertaining and well done. We then go to see the Shion and Nurugai versus Zujin fight, and in terms of how written it is, I think that this fight is the best in the series so far. Shion's fights against Zujin have always had such a heavy emotional weight behind them, and this one is clearly no exception. The fight starts off with Shion attempting to cut Zujin 1,000 times in order to force him to expend all of his Tao on regeneration, and let's just be real, this strategy is absolutely terrible, and I really expected something smarter from Shion, who is one of the most intelligent characters in the series, but I am actually really happy with what we got because seeing him cut Zujin hundreds of times is really cool. Shion then switches up his tactics and opts instead to hold down Zujin's plant ovule with his sword, sacrificing his life in exchange for Zujin's death. Since the whole Tenza and even the more recent Yuzuriha incident had subverted my expectations, I had honestly expected Shion to die here, but instead what we got was something much more amazing. Nurugai had a really great character moment here when she used her Talk no Jutsu to convince Shion not to sacrifice himself. I think it is really cool that Shion, who is blind, can still see much more than everybody else, but even he is not immune to being blinded by his desire for revenge, and it took Nurugai, a character who was initially portrayed as a naive child, to see beyond that cloak put up by the desire for vengeance and rescue Shion from his grim fate. Beautiful. After this, we just have all hell breaking loose. The Asaemon reinforcements and the Stone Village shinobi arrive, and the organized assault turns into a chaotic battle royale. One of the best moments of this was when Shugen confronted Gentetsusai and Fuchi. Shugen is undoubtedly one of the best characters in the series, and I love how well his resolve to completely purge the island of all criminals and their allies is portrayed in this altercation. Shugen was truly heartbroken by Fuchi's actions, and Fuchi's death at this point was one of the best deaths in the series. His sacrifice for Gentetsusai was simply stunning, and this entire scene with these three characters was one of the most emotional moments so far, and it is very well done. We see Sagiri being held up by Isuzu, who actually had a pretty good backstory for being somebody who is seemingly irrelevant to the plot. I actually didn't even realize that they called her a gorilla because of her skin color, and I thought it was just because she was buff or something, but it turns out that everybody on Japan was like Frieza level racist to her, calling her a monkey left and right. Like, I mean, I bet when she was on her way to the island, they were like, "Take that off the plane! Sir, please you need to stop." Anyways, the fact that Shugen accepted her for who she was and didn't care about the color of her skin really made Shugen even more likable, and I overall enjoyed that portion of the story. We also get some more insight into Gabimaru's past, which honestly disappointed me because it was so basic. As I stated in my first review, I was expecting something really tragic or maybe even some insane hardcore torture, but it was pretty much exactly how you'd imagine Gabimaru's backstory to be. The best part about this though was the reveal that Gabimaru is actually a name passed down from person to person, and this reminds me of the Kenpachi name from Bleach, and it's honestly just really cool. And while we're talking about the Gabimaru name, the fight between the two Gabimarus was absolutely incredible. That fight was definitely my favorite fight so far. The amount of ninjutsu used and the choreography was just incredible. The fight was constantly one-upping itself, and it was just a page-turner the whole way through. I especially enjoyed the flashbacks to the past that were used throughout the fight, and it gave me a Kakashi vs Obito vibe for some reason. Sagiri didn't really play much of a role in the fight except that moment when, and I'm not making this up, she was given a rape simulation drug. Yeah, I don't really get the point of that either, but it sure was entertaining, and overall, I really like the new Gabimaru, and for some reason, I feel like she's actually a dude, and it's not because she's flat-chested. I actually noticed that they never used pronouns when referring to her, but maybe I'm just being stupid or looking too far into it. The next important thing to happen was the epic moment with Jika. Jika is absolutely amazing, and his character is one of the most entertaining in the series. He definitely reminds me of one of Tite Kubo's characters like Kisuke Urahara and Billy Banks Jr. Just the fact that he's incredibly laid back and aloof one moment but a total badass the next is a trope that I really love, and it is done perfectly here. I think his ability to see how anything will move is really cool, and it does explain how easygoing he is. Like, why would anything matter to you if you already knew what path to take to avoid all harm? Additionally, I think the fact that he is bisexual makes his character even better. He is so laid back and apathetic that he doesn't even care about the gender of those he sleeps with, and I think a lot of times LGBTQ characters feel forced and simply done for the sake of representation, but when it has meaning beyond just superficial tokenism, it can really do the character and by extension the community justice. I think manga is doing a great job with this. I mean, we have Jika and then also Quan Chi from Chainsaw Man, but anyways, to get back on track, Jika cutting up that huge whatever that thing was definitely a memorable moment, and his ulterior motive of wanting Shion eliminated so he can experience even more pleasure at the top is very dark, and I really appreciate how nuanced his character is, and I really hope that he will play a big role in the final arc. Finally, at the end of the arc, we have Chobe seemingly sacrificing his life for his brother, and I'm unsure if he's actually dead here, but either way, his sacrifice was great and it was a very emotional moment. Now that pretty much does it for my review. However, I do have a few big picture things that I wanted to mention before I close off this video. First of all, I think this arc was definitely better than the last arc in terms of both the pacing and the quality of the fights, and while it did plague the beginning of the arc, the massive amounts of exposition dump was much less prevalent in this arc, and it allowed many characters to really come into their own. With that being said, there are still some characters that didn't quite hit the mark for me, and my two biggest examples of this are Yuzuriha and Sagiri, especially Sagiri, who basically did nothing this arc. I feel like all the time we have wasted on Sagiri's character could have been put to much better use focusing on the rest of the cast, and overall I think Sagiri has contributed basically nothing to the plot. I mean, of course that is just my opinion, and if you think Sagiri is a good character then please let me know why in the comments, but overall I really enjoyed this arc and I did find it to be the best arc in the series as I mentioned earlier. As for my predictions for the next arc, I think that Jika is going to pull something crazy that I will not expect. As for Shugen, his situation is really like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, and for the plot to progress, he either has to die or give up his beliefs to work with the criminals, and honestly, it would completely ruin his character if he were to concede his beliefs, especially given how strong they are, so I'm expecting and hoping for him to die near the end. I'm also expecting and hoping for a happy ending with Gabimaru and his wife, but hey, who knows, there might be some crazy twist at the end, and I know in my first video I said that the village chief is probably the final villain, but I no longer think that, and I think he's just going to get killed off screen or something to allow us to get a happy ending as quick as possible. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like because it really helps a small channel like mine. Additionally, please leave a comment below. I do read and reply to every single comment, and when I get them, I'm going to be trying to feature them in my videos, so thank you so much to everybody who has commented. If you're interested in any other anime or manga, I have lots of other videos covering lots of other series. I do rankings, character analysis, and chapter reviews, so if you're interested in any of that, some of my other content will be linked in the description, and yeah, have a great rest of your day, guys. Thank you again for making it to the end of this video, and yeah, peace out.